Motion song. Cool, lovely. And on side opposition, we have team Ramjas A dmin. I hope I finally pronounced that right.
La 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 la, wait till I get my money right. I had a dream I could buy my way to heaven. When I awoke, I spent that on a necklace. I told God I'll be back in a second. Man, it's so hard not to act reckless. To whom much is given, much is tested. Get arrested, guess until he get the message. I feel the pressure under more scrutiny. And what I do, act more stupid.
Cool. Hi. With that, both teams have been introduced. I request the chair, Mr. Aryan Ghosh, to please take over.
Cool. Hi guys. We're still waiting on Anika to download Zoom, so we'll just get over with the proceedings before that. Hi, Aryan. I'm the chair for the round. There's 3 rules to keep in mind. Number 1, post 7:15. Nothing is being noted. Please don't go over time. 2, please give and take POIs ultimately helps. It's an OGF. 3, and more importantly, please respect equity and don't be assholes. With that, before Anika joins in, asking all my panelists to please introduce themselves on order in tabs.
Hi, Aaryav, he, him. All the best to both the teams and congratulations for making it this far.
Hi, I'm Daksh. I'll be a panelist for this round. Just one quick shout out. Shout out to Ramjas. You guys did amazing. Crazy pull, man. Yeah, just that. All the best, guys.
Congratulations to both teams, Pragyansh here. All the best.
Hi, Sarvagya. Finally, the last push to get this done. Best of luck to both teams.
Hi guys, Tarushi. All the best for the round.
Just check.
Hi
Hello,
guys.
Anika this side.
Perfect. Thank you so
Melisani.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. With that, the motion we're debating on is this house believes that human beings have a moral responsibility to preserve the ecology of Earth, even at the expense of their own survival. Timer cannot be centered because of technical fallacies. Please self-time. I will still drop timestamps on chat. Prime Minister, whenever you're ready, you're here.
Hi, can I confirm if I'm both audible and visible? Great, Atiyab going in SPM. Shoutouts will do after the speech. Starting in, for POI, just write it in chat. I won't take verbally. It just disrupts my speech. Nothing else. Starting in 3, 2, 1. What is this cost of survival that we're talking about? We presumably stop doing things that hurt ecology, even if it questions our survival or reduces our utility within the debate. But second, this is not entirely about whether you should do it at the cost of ending your race. This is about making small and certain sacrifices within the debate. The second thing that I'm going to explain is that what is the difference between moral framework and utilitarian principles? I think this is not just about one person, but humanity as a whole. I think in order to judge this debate, your morality should not be anthropocentric. centric. What does this mean? This means that the emphasis that is placed on human life over anything else is derived out of the utility that you derive out of human efforts, intuition, or intelligence. That is not morality, that is utility, which means that the necessary benefit that you're able to derive out of something, that you place certain importance on that thing, which means that morality does not necessarily place importance on any one particular thing. Morality tells you that everything is equal before law, which means what morality tells you is that every life is equal. What do I then mean by that? The function of morality is to serve and protect those who can't protect themselves, which means that humans uniquely have the capacity to probably go ahead and protect themselves. And this is something that humans use in a more selfish way to derive utility only for them. What they end up doing is reduce utility for others. Morality does not tell you to protect yourself, utility does. But second, so what morality tells you as a human is that, but what morality tells you as a human now is that at a point in time you're taking away utility for other people, you necessarily need to give it back as well, which means that humans uniquely have the ability to go ahead and protect others. If they uniquely have the ability to probably go ahead and destroy homes, to probably go ahead and disrupt ecological balance within the society. If the goal of morality is to sustain human life, even at opposition's best case, if they say that all life is equal and human life should also be preserved, if they're not able to go ahead and achieve that, because if they're not able to go ahead and preserve ecology, there is going to be no human life or any life that can exist within the world, which at a point in time ecology fails to exist, which means that when you are able to preserve ecology, when you're not able to preserve ecology, there are no humans, there are no life, there is zero utility, which means that you necessarily need to go ahead and preserve this ecology, and you can't derive this morality out of anywhere, neither can you derive any sort of utility, which means that preserving ecology is something that becomes more universal, and that is something that the moral framework tells you to do. But third, we do not have the capacity or the epistemic access to understand the pain and suffering of
Arif,
animals, which means later the pain and suffering of animals, which means that if we make morality about preserving human good, you're sidelining the lives of others too. But do note, this is an observation that utility is not uniform throughout the world, which means that utility is not universal, which means that some people probably go ahead and value their life more as compared to the others, but also there are humans who are probably hurt more as compared to the others, which means that some people face face hardships like poverty, racism, discrimination, which means that all lives are not equal, which means that the utility that human innately derive out of their life is also presumably not equal, which means that there is a necessary need to have a more universal framework. I think morality is more universal because utility is not uniform, and hence I think that placing morality as more important as compared to your own utility is something that is necessarily justified. Before I proceed, I'll take up UI.
you can have moral responsibility to take care of something. The motion asks, can you die to, do you have moral responsibility to die to save something?
Yeah. We tell you that you have the moral responsibility to die, and I'll explain that to you later in my speech. But I think then that is, I think this is the clarification at the top of my speech, that you don't necessarily have to die. You start by making small sacrifices. And I think the binary that opposition is trying to set in this debate, that you necessarily have to die in this debate, is not fair. But I'll take that on that and on that as well. The second burden that I want to explain is why humans have the moral responsibility to go ahead and protect this ecology. Three reasons. One, humans are the only people who have the moral reasoning and foresight and to know the importance of ecology as compared to any other organism, which means that the only ones who have the capacity to probably go ahead and save this ecology, meaning human survival just becomes secondary to preserving ecology for wider scale utility for other living beings as well within the society. But second, only humans can make like more innovation and have the have the capacity to go ahead and communicate or probably go ahead and make more innovation, which means that cows cannot tell other cows to probably go ahead and preserve this ecology, and if humans do it, humans don't do it, no one else has the capacity to probably go ahead and do this, which means that only humans can go ahead and preserve this ecology. Hence, humans should do it in this debate. But third, before humans, ecology was thriving. Everyone was happy, everyone was thriving, and the world was a very great place to live in. Humans are selfish. Humans came to Earth. Humans derive utility out of a lot of goods. They hoarded and exhausted a lot of resources, and this is what led to the extinction of hundreds and thousands of active species. Which means you probably might have seen dodo bird hundreds or thousands of years ago, but you might not see that right now. You might have seen multiple species of birds hundreds or thousands of years ago, or even 10 years from now, but you don't see them right now. You might have seen seen a lot of crows in cities, but you don't see them right now, just because all of them are going extinct because of the 5G towers that humans are setting up, which means that humans were the tipping point of the ecological disbalance that was caused within the society, which means that other species have historically existed and will continue to exist in the society, but they don't cause the same scale of ecological imbalance as compared to humans. Hence, I think humans have the moral responsibility or the moral burden to probably go ahead and preserve this ecological balance. Next thing I'll explain is how this reparative responsibility proportionate on humans before I'll take up UI.
If a lion is attacking you and the only way to save yourself is to kill the lion, would you do it or not, assuming you have the capacity to do that?
You have the capacity to do that. You um if the lion is attacking, I think this is a false binary. I don't think that the ecology is attacking you. You are attacking the ecology. I don't think that a lion is probably going to attack you insofar as you don't go ahead and provoke that lion. Similar logic applies here. Humans literally provoked the earth. Humans have literally exhausted and used up a lot of resources. Humans have displaced a lot of animals within society. I think that is the tipping point where you have a moral reparative responsibility towards the ecology. Three reasons why that is true. One, I think there is extreme levels of harm that have been committed by humans, which means that humans take a lot of land and resources. You literally strip away animals of their land, their houses. You'd strip away them away of their life. You probably go ahead and eat a lot of chicken or a lot of non-veg. You've killed a lot of species and you're killing their families and children as well, which means that you're reducing their utility. But second, even if if you're not directly doing anything, which means that sure you're vegan, you're guilty by association, which means you increase demand for goods by being a consumer. This can look like you probably going ahead and use plastic, and that does damage to a lot of seas and coral reefs, etc., and that harms sea life. But second, you often go ahead and even if you consume jute bags, etc., etc., that is also bad because these are often things that take up cultivation, which also displaces a lot of species from their land. And I think by association, you're any and necessarily guilty for actually going ahead and displacing these animals and causing harm. But third, I think the harm is intergenerational and will outlive for hundreds of years, which means that the harm that you have caused is improportional, and you have to go ahead and reparate for hundreds of years. But like if one generation will benefit from the harm that we have done, by I think they should also take up the moral responsibility or to actually go ahead and reparate for that. More at DPM.
Thank you for the fine
Also,
speech.
shout
Yeah.
outs. Quick shout outs, my teammates, Hardik, Rishabh, Gupta, really nice teammate. I've been asking from him for a year. Shout out to my batchmates and Charlie, Vansh, Hardik. Yeah, same people. Lastly, shout out to my juniors, might be here for specking, Ananya, Divyanshi, Umar, Rishabh, Tushar, and many more. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, PM. Hello, whenever ready. You're here.
Hi, audible? Cool. Yes. I'll start before that. A couple of shout out. First to Aryan Bhaiya. Thank you for teaching me a very little which I know about debate. Shout out to TMC Depsot. Wonderful people with wonderful environment. Samrat, Divyansi, Hers, Suhail, Katesa. To my teammate Pranav and probably the guy. Sorry. Pratap and Arnav, the teammate which I wanted for a long period of time. Very very happy. Last shout out to Ramjas OC. I love you guys. Thank you for organizing this from. And yes, I'll start. Okay, assuming I'm audible, I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. We will win this debate by Pratap POIs. But few clarification. One, we can have moral responsibility to take care of something, but motion asked, do you have moral responsibility to protect it at the expense of your life? Which means that I can take care of something, but I cannot protect him even if I have to die. This is the binary we have to debate on. Not that if they are right that human beings are very utilitarian or whatever, obviously we know that environment is important, so obviously we don't outright damage it and we also have incentive to protect. That is not what this debate about. On any of the house, individual can make the decision to same environment which does not affect them. The last thing to note that this is not an individual debate, this is about human being. Please debate on more binary. The first thing which I want to prove that morality only exists with human being, and without human being, morality cannot exist. First thing to note that who the fuck created morality? Like animal don't do that shit. We are the human being who have consciousness. We decide that what is right and wrong, which means that there is no objective truth in this universe. It is up to our own subjectivity which we decide that what responsibility and obligation we have in the first place. But second thing to note that morality only stems from free will. On comparative, animals do not have a free will, which means that a non-carnivorous cannot decide that, oh, I want to be vegetarian today, let's not eat fish or not. Some animals literally kill their children to protect and prioritize one, which means that their life is deterministic in nature. On comparative, human will have a free will to decision, which means that they can decide or not decide. But on what is the comparative? If you remove human will, there is no morality which ceases to exist, which means that on Earth or any other planet, this is a cyclic event, which means that anything will happen, rain can happen, whatever, but you don't know what is the value of it. The only value and morality will only comes from human being. This proved first but in this debate that morality only stems from human and cannot stem and cannot be transferred to animal and environment in the first place. Second, do you have moral obligation or don't have obligations? First thing to note that since human being created morality, the purpose of creating the morality was to protect other individual who also have morality, which means that the individual who have consciousness, the individual who you want to hurt or don't want to hurt, individual who want to love or not harm. And this is why pure is important. If someone attack you, which is lion or other things, this morality does not cease to exist because you prioritize your own life, because the moral obligation is not to save every individual but to save you, owners of the house. They have a burden to prove that why you have moral obligation to die for a tree or whatever. But last thing to explain in this on the obligation part, note that ecology is instrumental in nature, which means that the only utility we derive from ecology is only when we are alive, which means that rain also happen in Uranus, there are mountain and sit on Mars, but this all of this thing does not matter because there is no morality agent on this planet to know and derive the value of ecology on this planet, which means that rain is only important if human being can feel the rain. Animals are only important if human being can eat them or can save them. It is up to them. But if you remove this consciousness of human being, you do literally have no moral instrument to divide or does not divide. But last thing to note, all the happiness or all the things which you base on your morality, which mean that you on the morality which whatever they claim about is probably like how do you feel happy, do you make any decision or not. It is up to your own opinion and subjectivity, which means that I feel happy when I save animal or not, do I feel happy when my child have something or not. All of this only comes when you have consciousness or morally understandable to understand this thing. On comparative, this obligation is not met, which means that obviously ecology can give you some sort of return in as a human being, but it is not a contingent requirement for you to alive or to be in one life or not life. This proof that what does this material prove so far? First thing which I have proven to you that ecology is instrumental in nature, which means it is not a collaboration of moral agent or other things, which means that if there is no collaboration of moral agent, there is no moral obligation to die for environment or to protect it at the expense of your own survival. Not we concede that you can and you should take care of environment. The debate is not about that. The last thing which I want to prove that even if you are living in fertile life, why do you have moral obligation to only protect yourself? The first thing to note that you are a moral agent, which means that your morality and the first obligation which comes from you is to protect yourself if you are not harming other individuals. But second thing to note, if you are not alive, you cannot do anything, which means that you cannot do good, you cannot do bad action, you cannot help other individuals, which means that your utility or even your morality cease to exist the moment you die, which means that you cannot do anything in life. The last thing we want to note that if you are being alive, you have moral responsibility to protect yourself, because this responsibility also translate to protecting your family being who are also moral agent, which means that if you die, you cannot provide to other things which you are subjective in nature, which you have prioritized other things. Since there is no objective truth, the morality which you choose to believe in and the obligation which you choose to believe in has to stand in the debate. We have proven to you that by individual should have the obligation to protect themselves in the nature. Before I move on, I will take your POI.
The motion talks about human beings. You don't have to impact all individuals, meaning even if some humans die and some humans live, we still can unlock all of our impacts.
Yeah, so I'm saying that no one so motion is a question. Should an individual, anyone, have the moral responsibility to die to protect ecology? That is the burden of this debate. The last thing which I want to note, so as I explained before, that morality can only stem from human being. If you are not alive, this obligation does not seem to exist. This wins on their ground because we have proven to you that by moral responsibility does not exist. Let's play some sort of utilitarian game. They say utility does not matter. The first bane is that only thing which you can objectively measure is utility in the first place, which means that if all the human beings are alive and they have more utility, why do human beings have more utility than environment? The first thing to note that human beings have a large more capacity to do any good other than any animals or other things, because we have consciousness, we have technology, all the math which Atiyab gave themselves, which means that utility is the only matter which we can judge apart from remove the subjectivity or the other things. But second thing to note, and this proof the moral obligation. The last time which I want to play is just mitigated their claim, which means that if you think normally, obviously with the obligation on owners of the house can be to like protect or take care of environment. This is why you have environmental laws. This is why you make like rules that you should not do this. This is why human beings are conscious whether they want to be vegetarian or not vegetarian. All of this are free will and only comes from morality, which means that on our side of the house, morality allow you to protect and take care of the environment. If you die or if you do not survive, other things make worse. But second thing to note that if you make your life worse, which if it is the best state, like even if you don't die, but you make your life worse, which means that only person who can feel utility, only person who can feel some sort of joy, don't feel joy. Because tree and environment cannot feel joy even if they are doing worse. So if you cut 9,000 trees, none of them feel pain. But if you don't give food to developing countries or poor person, they feel lot of pain. Which means that human beings are the only one, if they are not given the fullest utility, are the one who feel pain, are the one who cannot feel joy. On this comparative, environment cannot feel joy. I don't want to die for environment. For sure, I will take care for your environment. For all decisions, side out.
Thanking Elo for the fine speech. Deputy Prime Minister, whenever ready, you're here.
Audible. Audible.
Hi, your voice is extremely soft. Could I just like little closer to the mic?
Is it better?
Rishabh, just a second. This meet will end in 3 minutes and 50 seconds. So can we switch with
The Zoom?
the Zoom?
Yeah, don't
Oh,
worry. We are handling that right now, so not an issue. You can start at DPM.
no, wait, I'll be cut off in between, right?
No, 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 no. It'll continue nonetheless. We figure out a way to solve it.
Okay. I just said that.
Actually, just wait a minute. OC just trying to resolve this issue. I'm way, way sorry. We're trying to figure this out. My bad. It's like 5 minutes. We'll be done with this. Hi guys, so sorry for this delay and therefore this problem. Because of Zoom payments not coming through, please join the Gmate. We will immediately start as soon as teams are just join. Please don't like take too much time. Uh, okay, actually, wait. Yeah, cool, fine.
There's a text
We are here. Op is here.
या ऑप यहीं पे करा लो, जूम पे वापस चले जाओ, सॉर्ट हो गया, इट्स अनलिमिटेड नाउ, आ जाओ वापस, बी पेड।
वो तो आ रहा हूँ।
क्या प्रीमियम खरीद लिया था?
क्या हो रहा है? Is it happening on Zoom?
Yes, it's happening on Zoom, the same meeting.
अच्छा अच्छा.
You have to pause him.
Responsibility triumphs them all. This is not even a burden on our side of the house, because probably humans anyways have different responsibilities, and we do not have to prove to you that this one responsibility is more important than others.
Rishabh.
But we'll
Hello.
yeah.
I'm so sorry, but we joined the meet, so we could not listen to the
Yeah, and we were
speech.
told that we had to join. Can you please restart?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Three things. First is just why does this moral obligation extends to your survival. Second is why humans, even if they have created morality, and even if morality is subjective and all the stuff you listen from LO, can be transcended to animals and plants, and therefore they should be cared about. And third is just why these are extreme circumstances where this moral responsibility pivots other moral responsibilities that LO talks about. First is why does it extend to survival? And it does extend to the point that you can, even if you get killed during the process, that is justified. First is they say a lion attacks you, so you should protect yourself. But the issue is that you should not be bought into this rhetoric, because this is not part of the debate. Because first, it is still moral to protect yourself in self-defense on both sides of the house, because you were not responsible for the attack in this particular case. So probably in those emergency scenarios, anyways, killing that lion back is not something that goes against preserving ecology or goes against this obligation, because your other urgent obligations activate in this particular scenario because it is so urgent. But second, this also does not preserve ecology at all. Like, not killing the lion or killing the lion does not create any cascade in the ecology or creates any significant difference in the ecology. So you can still kill the lion and then donate in a charity that preserves lions. So probably you can still be clear of the both obligations and still protect yourself. So just don't get onto that rhetoric that opposition wants to push. The second is that the harm you did to the ecology requires you to protect at the cost of your lives. The premise is just on reparative obligation. We just fulfill the burden of why this is a proportionate reparative obligation, and therefore we win outright. First is that humans in millennia have killed millions of animals, killed trees, and took away the homes of birds and of turtles who no longer can live because polythenes are something that are stuck in their mouth, stuck in their bodies. You strip them of their dignity, strip them of their children. So the harm that you have done to these people is magnanimous to an extent that has reduced them to a point that they no longer can survive as a species, no longer can survive as a family. That means the harm that you have done to these animals, done to the ecology, who do feel pain, who do get sad, and who do get happy, to fulfill your own selfish obligations, in of itself explains that when now it's your turn to have be proportionate, the only way you can be proportionate in these reparations is by risking your also. And I still think this is disproportionate, because the harm you have done is too huge, and on our side of the house you are just asking them to have some risk of putting your life online. It is not necessarily that you always die while preserving ecology. So it is anyways pretty less that we are asking for humans. So anyways, the burden on proportionate is being fulfilled way better on our side of the house on reparative obligations. But second is that you as an individual only have the capacity to protect them too, because of the knowledge that you have to prevent. You only can innovate and create policies. So for example, if a person is drowning in front of you and you only know how to swim among the 10 people around you, probably there is a chance that you will drown too in the river. But since you have a certain capacity to protect that individual, and it is speculative whether you would die or not, we always push the moral obligation on that individual to protect that child who is drowning, because we think that this is the only individual who has the capacity to save that child in those scenarios. Now imagine you were the person who threw that child in that river also. Probably that moral obligation does exist on humans. At a point of time, they have done the worst harms. So probably their survival, even if being put under threat, is fine. The second thing Ob says is that humans created morality, and it is subjective and it cannot be transcended to animals and plants. The first thing is that you also cannot aggregate and sum the morality of all humans, because utility is different for different people in different ways. So probably saving the ecology might help tribals and some poor people who are currently hurt, but might not benefit the rich. Similarly, not saving the ecology might benefit the rich, but might also benefit the poor. This means the morality that Op is defending of utility of preventing humans' life is anyway subjective and uncertain. So even at their best, the best benefit that they get of humans want to save their families, human wants to save their money, etc., is all speculative and dependent on different humans, etc. The analysis that Atiyab gives to you as to why the reasons humans are even able to derive the concept of morality is because of ecology, is because of evolution that ecology made possible. So even if humans are important, ecology is the prerequisite to saving humans at the first place. Ecology is the prerequisite to all other life forms to even exist. So probably different utility metrics exist for different humans, but if humans are important and if other animals are to some extent important, we just by saving the ecology and preserving the ecology fulfill the higher moral obligation to protect all beings in comparison to just humans at opposition, even if we take them at their best that humans are important. But third, it is not clear whether this moral responsibility to prevent ecology even kills humans. And this is the false comparative that they've been pushing on us, because they need to prove that it is in most cases humans will be killed for them to explain that humans have a right to survive. Because if I'm not getting killed doing something, probably this is not the comparative that op can defend. It is speculative because it might even save millions of humans in future who live in a better world due to less pollution, better food that they can eat due to ecology being better. So what is clear is humans do not act to preserve, and if humans do not act to preserve right now, millions of animals and plants keep dying. This is a certain impact in comparison to humans acting on ecology, and some people might be dying and millions might be benefiting, again making their benefit and principle speculative at opposition. Lastly, they say is that trees do not feel pain. That is bullshit. Like, read biology. They do feel pain. Animals feel pain. And you also do not have epistemic access to know what is the extent of pain and happiness they're feeling. So they just cannot assert that humans are the ones who only have the capacity to create the most amount of joy. I think a mother who gives birth to a calf in a stable also feels pretty happy to see their kids. That's why they also protect their kids, which you can see in nature regardless. That means millions of animals, insects, fishes get more happy when ecology is preserved. So even if on utility they want to win this debate, on scale at a higher number of people we prevent pain onto them, and also to humans we prevent pain by bettering ecology for the future world. So on utility they are anyways losing. Before I move on, PY.
If there is a carnivore animal that has killed millions of other animals, do you think that animal should also die now?
So the issue is that the carnivore animal did not have the knowledge to know that I am causing harm, because you yourself say they did not have a moral framework. Humans had this moral framework, had the knowledge that the harm we are causing to these animals is taking away their land and is something that is bad. And most humans agree, and in most human societies agree. And if they still go ahead is what puts a reparative obligation onto them, because they had the knowledge and they also had the capacity to protect them. Lastly, OP assumes that preserving ecology can only come with people dying, but this is a false comparative because we have several alternatives which do not kill people. First is that green tech is developing pretty fastly. Investors are putting money into it because this is the next big thing. And I don't know how many people green tech is killing. Probably the manufacturing process is becoming less exploitative as more competition is entering. So I don't think people die. But second, we can just grow forest in places where we cut them. We just do not do that because of selfish incentives that companies and rich people have, which does not kill people. Like growing trees does not kill people. Or we can just stop using plastic, which probably creates minor inconveniences in our life, and shift to jute bags. This also does not kill us. The last thing is that might be humans have different moral responsibilities, but this moral responsibility triumphs everything, because the context in the world that we are debating right now is where emergency obligations come into power. So maybe it is good for me to go to a shop to earn for my family, but in COVID, where I can put everyone at threat, is when this is curtailed. Similarly, the condition of environment currently is extreme. There is no going back if we do not act now, and if we stop acting, we kill ourselves and people around us and animals around us. So any delay or soft action is also immoral.
Thank you, deep in the thanks speech. Deputy opposition, whenever ready, you're here.
Cool. 40 seconds.
DLO, whenever ready.
Perfect. Confirming audibility and visibility. Perfect. Some shout outs. This is my first AP final. So first of all, shout out to CPSF. Shout outs to obviously Bhavisya and Pratap, my brilliant teammates. Shout outs to Ansuman. Shout outs to Sani. Shout outs to the debating community at large. With that, also shout out to KMC and Hindu Decks for sitting there for most guys. चालू कर दे भाई अरे यार किसी just a second guys voice echo हो रही है cool perfect I'll do three things in my speech. First, I'll prove to you why, in general, humans are the ones that have autonomy, and that, in general, proves the choice which, like, in general, allows us to do things in the very first place. First, in general, I don't understand why people who want to like save plastic or not cannot do so regardless. But I think a clarification on the motion first. I think at large, it's at the expense of their survival, which means it's not that you are in general saving plastic or not saving plastic. It's about the fact that you're sacrificing your own life and probably your own existence. That means it's not about someone choosing who decides to live their life. It's about everyone choosing to do so. I think Rishabh's example is that you in general go ahead and swim in the water and a moral obligation is put on you to probably save other five human beings. But look about this from another perspective. I don't think we put a moral obligation on someone if, for example, like if for example their organs can save five other people, we do not put a moral obligation on them to save all those five other people in the very first place because we know that this is something that will kill them because of the fact that in general like this is at the expense of their survival. It's not just you inconveniencing yourself to go ahead in the water, get yourself wet, maybe get a little bit of cold, max to max hypothermia, which could possibly kill you. It's you directly, certainly killing yourself. And these people certainly do not have the choice if they're deciding or not. Then, at large, if, for example, humans are the ones that in general have the choice, then who is the one that puts the obligation on them? I think it's us in the very first place. And they concede in their speech that animals are not the ones which have moral obligation on them, which means if, for example, there are millions of animals which have died in the history of the earth, and that's maybe because of the fact that they like were eaten, maybe like in general, other animals made their survival too difficult. We did not put that responsibility on animals in the very first place because they were quote unquote not the ones that had knowledge as Rishabh says. But why are the ones that we, for example, who are inventing morality in the first place, why is that burden then placed on human beings in the first place? If it is to ensure that in general other species can survive because ecology is precedent, I don't think that idea stands. Two reasons for this. I think one, ecology is precedent to the survival of all other species as well. I don't think we blame ecology for like maybe what caused the ice age. But second, I think the ecology and environment at large is neutral, which means you can like I think you can objectively say in the span of maybe 10, 20, 100,000 years that ecology is doing bad. But think about 300 billion years ago. I think the Earth was a flat, dry planet with nothing else at all. 13 billion years ago, it was nothing till like Big Bang occurred. I don't think you then put it on the planet that in general there was no species survival or nothing at all. Which means if, for example, there were events of mass extinction, etc., this is not something that you put on the environment, and this is not something that you put on in general these animals in the very first place because of the fact that they died. The point being that Earth at large remains extremely neutral, which means in general, even if ecology dies, even if animals die, it is not something which affects the Earth at large because it continues in the same cycle. It maybe freezes, it continues to become hot. It is something that happens over time. Who are the ones that actually put that in general Earth is the one that needs to have a certain responsibility, or like Earth is the like it's ecology that we're preserving. It's human beings in the first place. That means we are the ones who are putting moral obligations on ourselves, and then we are the ones who are deciding to kill ourselves too. But then second, I don't think you're given the choice on who kills and who doesn't. But let's see on how does this happen and where does this happen. If, for example, you're doing this, and if like Rishabh wants to take this on pragmatics and saving plastic, etc., I think if it's a moral responsibility to preserve the ecology of the Earth, even at the expense of survival, I think that expense of survival essentially doesn't happen. You're not sacrificing billionaires for this at large. You're sacrificing the most vulnerable populations. It's like if, for example, too much like people are eating too much food in the very first place, it's like either you pick a randomizer and kill anyone, and these people haven't given their consent in the very first place. The idea of consent at large in general is particularly important because animals at large maybe feel pain for sure, but they're not aware about the existence of this in the very first place, which means their consent, you don't essentially take their consent at large because it's not an important idea or value to them. But again, then at large on the idea of self-preservation and why the idea of self-preservation and the idea of self-moral obligation to self is more important. I think first we are the ones that are largely entangled to ecology. If their idea is that ecology is destroyed, we are also destroyed. But I think it's a trade-off that you're taking in the very first place, which means you're not killing yourself to ensure that ecology survives. Because in general, that is something that is much more precedent to you because you are the ones that determine the value of ecology at large. But second, it's the creation of nature itself and who becomes conscious about the nature and about the existence in the very first place. But third, it's about relativity, which means in general, if Pratap's philosophical knowledge is correct, which I'm hoping it is, it means if, for example, humans on the idea that you actually understand and are able to understand the pain of others. That means if, for example, you don't exist as a human being, you can't understand if, for example, an animal feels pain in the very first place. An animal doesn't understand if human is feeling pain or not. It's for him, it's deterministic, which means if, for example, they can survive or they cannot survive. For us, it's we do not want to kill an animal because I can understand that if someone hurts me, then maybe I will also feel hurt. I want to treat others the way I want to be treated. I would turn vegan. That means that autonomy of choice is only unlocked at human beings in the very first place. But second, I think at large, your survival allows you to, in general, spread the idea of moralness and how, for example, this happens at large within, for example, human species, which in general is something that they're never able to do. But then it's on reciprocity, which means in general, if, for example, a human being is nice to me, I am the one that feels obligated to be nice to them. In general, if, for example, Escobar was the one that brought hippos to Colombia, the hippos did not feel an obligation to him in the very first place. We don't blame them for, in general, the problems that they cause, but we do blame human beings because that's our moral compass, and we feel that it was something to be blamed on human beings. But before I move on, sure, go ahead, PY.
So the motion says even at the expense and not expense. So it is not necessary people get killed. So can you please fulfill your burden to explain how many people do get killed when preserving ecology?
I think this is basic motion clarification. I think at large, if you're if it's even at the expense, which means it's your burden to fulfill that it's fine, even if it's at the expense of their survival, which means if their survival is gone, it's fine. We'll still do it regardless. It's not our burden to fulfill. It's your burden to fulfill. Our burden to fulfill is that, sure, you may have a moral responsibility to preserve the ecology, but you don't need to do it at the expense of your survival. You should not do it even at the expense of their survival. The burden identification is just incredibly wrong. But then what do I get from a large part of their speeches? But I think in general, their idea just is that ecology remains precedent and human beings are at the center of everything and every life should be equal. But who assigns value to those lives in the very first place? If, for example, it's human beings that are deciding that in general it's a life that is more important, it's not. In general, go ahead and decide yourself intuitively which value will be given more importance to. If, for example, it's at the expense of survival, which means if the motion burden I have identified is correct and Rishabh's is incorrect, what happens then? I think the value of life is put less to people who, for example, are not able to do anything. Either you randomly kill millions of people because in general that's what ensures the survival of ecology, or second, even worse, you actually pick people from developing countries. You pick the ones that are worse off because their value of life is less. The value of life of Jeff Bezos is pretended to be more than the value of a poor person on the street because Jeff Bezos is adding shareholder value to the economy at large, which means the moral obligation then doesn't come to those people, but it comes to the most vulnerable people, which means it's not on us. It's ones that in general, as long as we are the moral agents, we receive a responsibility to ourselves to save ourselves because morality only unlocks on our very own ideas. With that, proud to oppose Monitor.
Thank you for the fine speech. Government whip whenever ready. You're here.
Hi, I'll take 30 seconds. Hi, am I audible and visible?
Perfectly.
All right, great. This is Hardik. I'll do shout outs at the end. I would love a POI, preferably after the 5th, but I'll definitely take one. Starting my speech in a self count of 3, 2, 1. Two bullshits I'll call at the top of my speech. The first one is that this motion talks about even at the expense, meaning that in all cases, you won't have to die for your life. This is a bullshit claim coming from opposition. But even if that's not true, throughout my speech, I'm not going to talk about animals even for 1 second. Our comparative is that other humans are also reliant on ecology, meaning that if you hurt the environment, future generations are also probably being harmed. But the current people who still live, even at the expense of some people dying, will still be harmed if you don't prevent the ecology. But that's the first thing. The second thing is that you still have harmed the previous generations and thousands years of generations, meaning that you still have certain moral responsibility to cater to them. Cool then. All of our impacts are going to be contingent on people and people only, meaning that if ecology damages, meaning that if environment does not stay, if fossil fuels vanish, if water becomes impure, etc., people and humans are also harmed to a great extent. Meaning that the first impact and the first piece of weighing I'm going to do is on simple responsibility. Two things under this. The first thing is that humans have uniquely created global warming. Humans have created destructions of cities, meaning that humans have done two-layered damage. The first one is that humans have deterred other humans to probably have encroached upon their dignity to live. Meaning that if I'm in Syria and if I was bombed and if I was in a city that was damaged because of like environmental pollution or whatever, I do not want to live. I do not want to reproduce, etc. This also applies to animals, but it also applies to humans. Meaning that if my responsibility or my ability to reproduce and contribute meaningfully to society has been damaged by other humans, this is fair to say that ecology being survived or ecology being prioritized is the thing that should go through. But the second thing under this is simply that this has happened throughout years and years of time, meaning that this impact is like more better than utilitarian impact that they are trying to claim. Why? Because this is proportional, meaning that if I slap you, you can't fucking kill me, right? Which is to say that if the damage that you did as a human species to all of these thousands and thousands years of previous human society is that massive, that prolonged, and that severe, you can't simply say that, but oh, I don't give a fuck because I want to prioritize my own living life right now, even if you live in a comfortable life. The second thing under this is that the experience was much more prolonged because it's thousands of years of past experience. So the inherent moral responsibility is significantly higher. But the severity of damage to much people, so who like literally had to like replace or leave their houses, etc., and who could not make kids or whatever, who were bombed, etc., were are also much higher. Cool then. The second piece of being able to do under responsibility is literally their claim. They say humans necessarily have the exclusive capacity to do so, and this our claim as well. We agree, but we do that on a better scale. We do it better. Why? Because even at their best case, even if poor people die, even if you rescind all of the fossil fuels, you don't give water to poor people, whatever, some humans still live. Meaning that even if rich people survive in our paradigm, the poor people of the future will be better off. And the way on this is simple: that if the world is going to survive for the next 5,000 years, the number of poor people living in the next 5,000 years when the cycle of poverty repeats are going to be inherently higher. Meaning on numeracy we will, because poor people of the future inherently will be higher on number. I'll take a definite POI after 2 minutes. Cool then. Let's cater to what is the most likely case then. The likely case is that, and that's what the motion says, I hope Cap knows, is that even at the expense, meaning in most cases you won't die. This just looks like you won't be able to burn wood for your like daily fire if you're a poor person. This looks like probably you have to switch to better cars, etc. I have 3 layers of response to that. The first one is that morality is subjective. It applies to subjective context. Meaning if I'm eating chicken at the comfort, meaning that this is the active choice that I'm making at my comfort, this is not a literal survivability choice, meaning that this moral responsibility applies less to me. So if their idea is that, oh, a lion is killing me, the moral responsibility is still there, but it's significantly lesser than when I'm eating chicken, because eating chicken is a comfort food. It still does not hamper my survivability. Cool then. Meaning if don't buy any of their rhetoric bullshit on, oh, if a lion is killing me, blah, blah, whatever bullshit you guys are asking. The second thing under this is that, again, you can continue to do so. We're not asking you to opt out of it. We're just saying if and when you do these kinds of actions, you are a morally flawed agent. There's just two things for the debate. The first thing that is just is that inherently we're trying to deter it. The entire point of this debate on why humans should have certain or any moral responsibility at all is that when you do a morally bad thing, such as slapping your best friend or whatever, then you should not do it, deter it to some extent and not promote it. So if this moral responsibility does not exist on their side, you rather are promoting these kinds of things, not deterring it, which we do. The third and the most important response to this is quite simple. I'm going to draw two analogies for you. The first analogy is that whenever governments or anybody, rich people, are putting a ban and like hampering poor people, this happens either way. And I'm going to give two examples for it. The first one is that doctors are expected to save infectious patients, even if at the cost of their lives. Soldiers are expected to die at the borders, even at the cost of their lives. All of this is true, and all of this happens, and nobody gives a fuck about it. Everybody thinks it's okay. And sure, their claim is going to be, but oh, soldiers opt into it, doctors opt into it. Humans have also opted into it by being a bird, like being a child of my previous generations. I am guilty by association. So even if my ancestors caused global warming, even if my ancestors caused global warming, I am guilty by association. I have opted into this narrative. But let's take them in the best case. Let's say we haven't opted in. The second and the most crucial response to this is that tax, like when you tax the poor to serve the rich, this is where the poor people have also not opted in, which is why the entire structure, the entire reparation system exists to structurally reverse the things that are done by poverty, where people had no choice. Meaning, cool. This structural reparation and this moral responsibility that the state does to serve the poor people should also apply to other humans, which are going to outlast your own life. Before I move on, quick POI.
So, if you do agree that the preservation of future generation is important, you do agree that preservation of human autonomy is uniquely important.
Oh my fucking god. The entire point of this is future generation will only survive if the ecology remains in a certain level. It's constantly deteriorating. If you're not saving this, if you're not saving the ecology, you're making it further and further worse for them. But that's not our case. Our case is also that you have done damage to the previous generations, meaning the responsibility factor for you still is there. We're not expecting you to opt into it, but if you don't, you're a morally flawed agent. Cool. The last example I'm going to do it to this, and that's their framing, by the way, is that humans have certain kind of humans have the exclusive capacity because they have rationality. They're better rational agents than other sentient beings, meaning they have the exclusive capacity. Note crucially, the second intuition pump here is that when you were in COVID, you were the sole breadwinner of your family. You had the responsibility to go ahead and risk your life and go ahead and still earn for the family. This responsibility also applies to humans, especially because humans only have the capacity to serve other sentient beings. Which is to say, when I was in COVID and I was the sole breadwinner of my family, I had the responsibility to do so. If I don't, nobody will fuck me over, but that makes me a morally bad agent. Cool then. Pathways to victory. The first pathway to victory is that historically you have a moral responsibility. Humans are guilty by association for causing all of the harms to the environment. But secondly, more importantly, our claim is just that you save better animals, but more importantly, the humans that are going to live in the future generations, humans that are going to be left right now, are also better off. The last pathway to victory is simple: that you are conceding the fact that this is a moral responsibility, meaning every time a person is going to take such action, he's going to think twice before doing it, meaning that you're deterring it, not promoting it. With that, extremely proud to propose. Oh, I'll do quick shout outs. Shout out to D2 Depsock, shout out to Rishabh, Bridik, Ayushi, Raina, Gyan, my seniors, shout out to my batchmates, Atiyab, shout out to my juniors, and shout out to my roommate, Mr. and Tanmay, Anika.
I think that was a fine speech. Opposition whip whenever ready. You're.
Am I audible and visible? I think just a couple of shout outs. I think shout out to my parents, shout out to my lovely teammates, Bhavisya and Arnav. Shout out to Yuvraj Bhaiya, my goat, for teaching me how to debate and a lot of other things. Hey, he's cap at Rifakat, but I'm still here for you guys. So shout out to Hindu Depsok, I think. Yeah. I think that we are doing pretty well, like Akshat, Keshav, and all. My juniors, Vardhan, Pulkit, Athar, Prerna, Chit, and Saransh, yes, you as well. And just like all of my friends, Sarvagya, Shivani, Daksh, Swayam, all of you. I'm really sorry if I'm forgetting someone. Yeah, shout out to Ria. Also, shout out to Rishabh Bhaiya. You have asked me a couple of times, and I really respect you as a person and as a debater. So it's a great feeling to be in finals with you. Yeah, I know that was long, but I'll begin on my next word. This is not a policy motion. You cannot pick and choose who you are going to sacrifice, who you are going to scapegoat to make sure that humanity is able to survive in the future or the ecology is like able to get better. This is a simple truth and false value judgment motion, which means whether humans have the moral obligation to preserve the environment at the expense, even at the expense of their own life or not. Their burden was to show that even if humans die, that is okay. Environment matters more than the survival of humanity. But the only response that they then have is like, oh, but like if humans don't survive, then how? Like sorry, if the environment does not survive, how will the environment? How will humans? And deal with this. Let's deal with their first principle on like the idea of reparation. They say that, oh, humans have historically killed like millions of animals, the first thing that I want to note then is like this is not a direct action of the humanity at status quo, which means that even if my ancestors like probably, let's say that if the Britishers colonized India or like killed millions of Indians because of like the famine or because of the colonialism or because of all the wars, etc. Note that we do not say that the Britishers present should die as well, like should die or like go ahead and like have these reparative obligations in the first place. But also that this analogy is like strongly skewed, right? Because if we don't expect this obligation even when a human harms another human, how do you expect these obligations and it's about humans harming like these like environment in the first place? But the second thing that I want to note then is like on their idea of sentience. They say that, oh, but animals also feel sad. We think that the distinction is simple, and this is what Bhavisya tells you about free will and determinism. We think that the way that animals or plants react to like certain situations is simply because of chemical reactions, like in terms of maybe their like pain receptors acting because they want to live, because they want to survive, etc. We think what fundamentally distinguishes animals from like humans from animals in the first place is our capacity to like do actions that are probably painful to ourselves but still provide us some form of meaning. We think that humans have this unique capacity to be able to like derive value even independent of like whether some things are like purely for pleasure or pain, for the same reason that people probably fast on Karwa Chauth, or like for the same reason that people choose to go vegan even if like it hurts their diet, or like all sorts of reasons, because we think that humans exclusively derive something like independent of the pain and pleasure that it like provides them. But the second response that I have to note on them is like all the analogies that they give, like go ahead and give to you in terms of doctors, in terms of soldiers, in terms of like me saving a drowning child, notice that they never once use the word animal or the word like plants or like things like that, right? They don't tell you that if a dog is drowning you would expect a person to dive. They say that if a child is drowning you would expect a person to dive. Their very use of example shows that they intuitively believe that humans have a higher obligation to other humans and to themselves as opposed to like these animals in the first place. But second thing that I want to note then is like this is not like this their analogy is skewed because of the fact that it's not necessary that like that these humans have the capacity to like go ahead and do this in the first place. But lastly then, we think like our case is pretty simple. Two things: one, why humans don't have like any obligations to the environment or the ecology, etc. But second, even if there are some obligations that exist, why the obligation to self and other humans precedes like is above that, etc. One, I want to note that the idea is that the reason why your self matters the most is because it is logically prior for you to like go ahead and do anything else. Which means that if you want to preserve the environment, if you want to contribute to charity, if you want to save an animal who probably got hurt like by some other bigger animal, etc., to do any of these things, the first logically prior condition is for you to be alive in the first place. Which means that the self-preservation of humanity or the self-preservation of individuals is the most important thing for humanity to go ahead and like do anything else in the first place. But the second thing, this is like a philosophical debate, which means that if the normative imperative of doing things is that one out to do this, out always presupposes the existence of is. There can be like nobody to actually do a moral obligation or fulfill a moral obligation if that subject does not exist in the first place. The second thing then, why do we not have obligations to animals? One, I want to note that humans exclusively have moral agency, which like extends to only moral actors. Three reasons. One, we think that moral agency is ascribed to only the individuals who are able to intentionally act, which means that if I'm debating right now, I'm doing this with intention. Animals eat because their chemicals tell them that they're hungry. Animals run away if they're scared because their, I don't know, their adrenaline or whatever tells them to run away, etc. at any points in time. Humans exclusively have the exclusive like unique ability to act with intention, which prescribes them this moral agency. Second, we think that you need to understand the distinction between right and wrong. Only humans have the capacity to do that. We don't think that animals care to think what is right or what is wrong. Third, we think that accountability is the most important metric to decide whether or not someone is a moral agent or not. Because presumably, even if an animal eats a person, you wouldn't say let's jail the animal, because you would just say that the person is stupid for going there, precisely because of the fact that we expect humans to be the moral agents. We don't expect like animals to have the same sort of morality. We say that it ate like the human only because like that's the only thing it is designed to do in the first place. The second thing that I want to note then is like sentience does not translate to moral agency at any points in time, simply because like Immanuel Kant would say that like you don't have an obligation to save animals, but at the same time you don't necessarily have to harm them, which means that we still generate moral obligations to preserve the environment, but that is still anthropocentric. I should preserve the environment to save myself, to save my future generations. This is not the same as having obligations towards the environment at the cost of like your own self in the first place, like any of that. The last thing that I want to note then, and like this one, I want to mitigate their idea on future generations. Couple of responses. One, the problem of non-identity, as like Derek Parfit would say, we think that you do not get to decide whether or not the future generation should like live or not. You cannot change the status quo, because like if you drastically change it, then the comparative for these people is that they don't exist at all. Because if you change the circumstances of present world, you change the way that individuals are born. But the second thing that I want to note then is that you always prioritize the like the existence of like current people for the same reason that we advocate for abortion, etc. We think that we have a higher moral obligation to preserve the life of the person living right now and not the life of like a potential life at any point in time. They never explain why it is justified to kill millions of poor people today if like millions of poor people later will be born at any point in time. The last thing that I want to note then is like, why does self-preservation weigh over future generations, etc., is simply on certainty of impact. It's uncertain whether the humans living 100 years from now will have a better life or not, but the only certain harm on their side is that they end up like killing a lot of these people. This is a certain harm that you have to like give us this debate on at any points in time. Okay, as POI, this debate should be judged normatively. We are able to show you that moral agency only extends to like humanity, people who are capable of having moral rationality at any points in time. We think that human life is extremely special. For the same reason, trigger warning, we say that people should not kill themselves or people should prioritize life is precisely because of the uniqueness of this thing. We value people who willingly become vegan, but we don't think that we should force everyone to become vegan, nor is there a moral obligation. These have instrumental value. The only utility that these things have is that they serve a purpose to us. We think that we are superior. Proud to oppose.
Thank you all for the fine speech. Op reply whenever ready.
Hello, hello, audible? Chair, am I audible? Great. Am I the only one who cannot hear? Like, can anyone confirm if I'm audible?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
you're
audible.
audible.
Cool, cool. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, shout out to Menat, Sivani, Swam, and Japno. Cool. I'll start my speech in three, two, one. This motion is not framed that human have an obligation to take care of environment. It is not framed that you should prioritize environment over your current happiness. It is framed in a way that should you protect environment even at the expense of your survival. I really hope the panel understand the basic grammar than the side better than the side government. Cool. What are the reasons which they give that human beings should have an obligation to protect environment even at the expense of their survival? They say that animal feel pain and you have caused pain to animal, hence you should protect this animal. First question which we asked them, that animal also causes pain to other animal. Animal can also cause pain to human as being. Why should this moral obligation should only rely to human? They say that animals are not moral actors. Yes, we agree that animals are not moral actors, which means that there is no moral obligation to do this and on their side of the house. But certain thing to note that animals don't understand pain. Animals don't understand the feeling. As I given example, many animals kill their own children. Many animals leave their own children behind to prioritize their own species. If you don't have food, you literally eat your own child. This is very common in animals. Sure, they have a chemical to traumatization in their body, but they don't have morality. They don't understand the concept of happiness and sadness. Most of the animals don't do that, which means that pain of the animal does not stand this debate. But even if it does exist, we know that your own pain is more important to you than other individual. This is why even if I have money and this money is only for me, and I see that there is a very poor person dying, I will not give him this money because my obligation is only to me and to my family. If I have extra money, sure I can give him, but my own survival money cannot give to other individual. Second thing they say that you have to also think about other individual and other like person. No, you don't have to do that. Know that this is why people kill for each other. If a bear comes into my house, I will kill that person because I have more my survivor, more expand than other survivor. But second thing to note that it is cannot be used for obligation to kill yourself. This is why we don't allow individual to give their organ to any other individual or give whole body to other individual, because that is just not allowed. Which means that saving other individual, by the way, never prove that by it is connected or cannot be used. The last time they say that environment is logically prior to survival. Yeah, but that does not mean that you have to kill yourself to save it. As I explained before, the environment only have a value if human being exist, which means that rain happens in every different planet, but as an individual, as a humanity, the rain is only valuable to me if human being exist on this planet. The last line evolution they have is that future represent, Pratap already deal with it. What do we give you as a reason that why you don't have obligation? This is the burden which you have to fulfill, that you don't have to kill yourself or risk your own survival to save environment. The first thing we say that your own survival is more important to you than anything. Look, that you were born arbitrarily with them, which means that you have a responsibility to protect yourself, which means that you have a responsibility to protect individual who you love, because morality is subjective, which means that you cannot make universal principle claim for every individual, which means that only morality that stem from you can only up to you, which means that if individual prioritize, which they do right now, over themselves, over their family, over environment, this is up to them. Certainly we say that morality and anything cease to exist if you don't exist, which means that your moral compass does not exist the moment you die. On the comparative earth is neutral, which means that ecology, as Arnav explained, does not have any value without human. You can have one normal planet, we have thousands of planets, I'm pretty sure all of this animal and trees also exist on this planet, but they hold no value to us because we don't exist there. Only value that we derive ourselves is from our own birth or other things. This gives two reasons. One, to protect your own survival, to protect individual who you love and perceive this is your moral responsibility, but certainly also prove that that is moral responsibility and does not apply to other animals. Last their case, they say that we don't have to die, we will protect environment. This is first all co-option, this is first symmetric. Note, the on our side of the house, I can save environment, like I can go to protest, I can not eat a non-vegetarian thing, I can save plastic on any side of the house, but that does not question my survival. On any side of the house, individual make effort to save environment because they have an incentive, they like this said. But this debate is not about saving environment, but saving yourself or the environment. For all those reasons, panel, let me save myself. Proud to post.
Hi, op reply, gov reply, whenever ready.
The motion is that humans should have an obligation to preserve ecology. If the saving part comes to a point that you should give your life for it, you should. The motion is not that you should give your life, otherwise there wouldn't have been a word called even. So thank you for coming to my Grammar 101 class. Now, do we kill people who are not mentally well and cannot understand joy or happiness? We do not. Do we kill a child who does not have a moral framework made yet? We do not. Because we as humanity universally agree to not use things as means to an end. So even if opposition with a lot of analysis explains that animals are inferior to humans, they never explain why killing them, why taking away their homes and abusing their children is also fine and does not create a moral obligation in return. The people in the past and the moral frameworks in the past believed some races to be inferior and some races to be superior, and therefore abused them and killed their homes. The same obligation now applies to them in status quo also when moral frameworks have evolved, because we as humans have universally agreed on humans not being used and other people not being used as means to an end, irrespective of whether they're intelligent, irrespective of whether they feel joy or happiness or not, also probably applies to animals also, and plants and other insects or whatever. Then, in all their speeches, at best, they explain as animals matter less than human. But problem is, all of that assumes this op team knows how animals and trees feel. We do not. And that is why it's speculative whether anthropocentrism is the best way to see this world or not. We explain that ecology creates the conditions for even morality to exist. It is not just animals. It is the seas which often self-regulate, which you kill. It is often the trees which allow you to breathe at the first point and to create life through which you create any morality. So probably if morality is being created from ecology, there is no value to that morality if you do not value ecology to a point that you do not give your life. The last thing is they somehow say that other planets might not be of value, sure, and that's why the motion says Earth. And that's why our ecology point being prerequisite to a lot of value that humans create, the morality that they create stand. So if you agree that the moral framework of this debate is not anthropocentric, we are already winning pretty clearly, because they do not engage in those instances where the morality framework might not be anthropocentric and never explain why there is still not a moral obligation and only engage on the premise. So we are anyways winning if you agree with this premise. Now let's buy into opposition frames that humans matter a lot and they should not be killed for the environment. We explain throughout our speeches why the obligation still exists in this frame. First is we explain a repetitive obligation being massive. because the hurt you cause is to every living being on earth for selfish incentives, whether humans, whether poor people, whether animals, for your own comfort. The reasons humans are special actors is because humans had alternatives. I had an alternative to chicken. I had an alternative to cut that tree in comparison to just reusing the things that I have in my home instead of buying new things, etc. And when you have the knowledge of the harm that you're doing to which other actors did not, even if they did some harm to the environment, this makes humans specifically evil. So risking their lives, which op never proves what even this risk is, seems a pretty small price to pay if what you did was so vastly immoral. And if their logic is animals might hurt humans or humans can hurt them, this also works vice versa too. That if animals can be killed for the benefits for humans can also be killed for the benefits of animals and the world at large if they're also massive on scale. Lastly, it is speculative whether few people dying for the preservation of ecology even hurts humanity. Obviously, it does hurt the person who dies, but it also benefits thousands who are still getting killed every day due to pollution and tsunamis. So if the freedom of humans matters so much, probably preserving ecology unlocks the freedom of more people on our side of the house in comparison to there, because they give no other alternative of how humans can protect themselves in vast instances. But lastly, we explain is that we take them at their best. Okay, humans are more important and they have various obligations, but the issue is it does not fit in the frame where the world is in currently in 2025. The climate change is at the brink of becoming irreversible, and we are also aware of it. So in such extreme scenarios, some obligations ride and become extreme. When the obligation becomes extreme, because any action below your survival might be like soft actions or just very minor inconvenience, might not be enough to save the world. Whatever you do below just putting your life on the risk is going to be moral. Because of that, Gov.
Thanking Gov reply. With that, we come to the end of the Open Grand Finals Deployment 2025. Teams and you can now leave the meeting. Thank you so much for tuning in. Judges, please join the room one on Discord, the Edge voice channel. We'll figure out balance there itself. Thanks so much, guys, for joining. And closing will start shortly. And by shortly, I mean shortly. Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the debate, guys. Good luck.